Hey there. Do you ever watch videos from ultralight backpackers bragging about their 12-pound or even their 10-pound base weight and think, dang, that's good for you, but I don't have the money. I can't afford a new pack or $600 or $700 for a new tent? Well, if that's you and you're stuck with the gear that you've got, stay tuned because I'm going to share some great tips for how to take some weight out of your pack for nothing at all. Okay, so before I get into the tips, I want to tell you a little story. And that is the first time that I ever went backpacking, I only had a couple weeks to prepare. So I had to go out and get the first backpack I could find that was in my budget. I went to REI and picked up a tent on a garage sale back when they had the garage sales once a month. And I just did the best I could. So when my pack was ready to go, it was well over 30 pounds and I literally sat down and cried. It was like a moment from Wild before Wild was a movie, but I was just freaked out. I'm like, I can't carry this. I've never backpacked before. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I randomly started pulling stuff out of my pack, and it turned out that I left out things like my puffy, which I needed because it ended up being really cold. It even hailed on us that weekend, and some other key pieces of gear. So you don't want to do that. Since then, I have done a lot of backpacking miles, and I have learned through experience that there are some great ways to lighten your pack. And you can certainly spend a lot of money on lighter gear, and I'll do another video on some great lighter gear. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to give you several ideas for ways that you can lighten your pack without spending any money at all. Now, first off, I want to just share my philosophy about how to lighten your pack and to let you know where I'm at. I'm 15, 16 pounds at this point. I've gradually moved down from that 30-some pound weight to mid-20s, and then over time have shaved it just based on lessons learned and process of elimination. So I took the approach that everything weighs something. That's true, right? Laws of physics, but a lot of people don't think like that. They're thinking, how much does my rain jacket weigh, and how much does my sleeping bag weigh, and how much do other items weigh? But then they overlook a lot of the little things that actually can add up to serious weight in your pack. So to get some things down, just to start with, since everything weighs something, it's important to weigh everything in your pack, and I mean everything. And you may call me a little bit OCD, but I can tell you how much a Q-tip weighs. Well, most people use lighter pack to track their weight. I go old school and use a spreadsheet because I can put every single thing in my pack in there, and I've got it set up to where I've got the item, and I even have multiple items. So if I have shirts, I've got 3 or 4 t-shirts, I know how much each one weighs. And I can say, am I bringing one of this item, like a Q-tip, or maybe I want to bring 5. And granted, the difference between 1 and 5 Q-tips is negligible, but when you total up the weight column, you can see, okay, what's the weight that my pack is going to be, and then where can I maybe shave a little bit because I've got too many things. So tip number 1 is to identify things that you don't really need to carry. So if you're heading out on a backpacking trip and you've got, say, 3 pairs of socks, do you really need 3 pairs of socks? I started the AT with 2 pairs of hiking socks, thinking, okay, I can wash one and wear the other, but you know what happened? I ended up just carrying around wet, soggy, dirty socks, and that wasn't a good thing to have in my pack or even hanging off my pack. So I pared it down and just went to 1 pair of hiking socks. I would wash them out when I needed to, let them sit overnight, and if they were wet in the morning, then that was just fell into the category of embrace the sock that comes along with hiking a long distance trail. So I got down to 1 pair of socks. I reduced things like underwear, and then I looked at gear that could serve multiple purposes. Tip number 2 is to make sure that everything in your pack, as much as possible, can serve more than one purpose. Now, that's not going to apply to everything. If you've got a spoon, you know, you might think, well, what else can I do with this spoon? But that spoon can also replace a pot scraper, and in conjunction with a bandana, then maybe you don't need to take a scrubby. Maybe you don't need to take a cloth just for the purpose of cleaning out your pot. Now, as you start to weigh things, you might think, well, can I use my bathroom scale? And if you've got a digital scale, then that's probably going to work reasonably well, especially if it goes into tenths of a pound. But if you have the opportunity, if you've got one laying around the house, you can borrow one. Get one of these little postal scales, because these measure in both grams and ounces. And I like to measure in grams because it's a more precise calculation of weight. So there are 28.35 grams in an ounce. You can round that up if you want. But if you've got something that weighs 10 grams versus 30 grams, that might not seem like much, but if you think about it, it's 3 times as much. So which one would you rather take? And then as you start adding things in your pack, that extra 20-gram difference multiplied over several different items is pretty soon going to add up to half a pound, a pound. Before you know it, you're taking out some serious weight. Tip number 3 is just compare different items and figure out which weighs less and if the lighter item is going to work for your hike. So I have this cute little 𝐬𝐫𝐢 multi-tool. It's neat. It opens up into pliers that you might think might be handy on the trail, and it's got knives in it and that sort of thing. This little knife, also from 𝐬𝐫𝐢, super sharp, does one thing. It cuts when you need it to cut. Got 2 items to choose from. The little 𝐬𝐫𝐢 multi-tool weighs 66 grams. The little 𝐬𝐫𝐢 knife weighs 16 grams. And if you're doing the math, this weighs 4 times as much as this does. So that's a 50-gram difference, which is not quite 2 ounces. And how much is in a pound? 16? So I'm already on my way to taking a pound out of my pack. A couple of other items to compare are clothing. And we'll talk more about clothing in a second, but this little t-shirt, it's a lightweight hiking shirt from Patagonia. I've had it for a while. It's a lot lighter than this little Mountain Hardwear hiking shirt, which I've also had for a little while. I like them both. They're both great hiking shirts, but if I was going on a long distance backpacking trip, I would have to say which of these 2 shirts is going to be the best for my hike. This lightweight one is only 56 grams. This one is 108 grams. So they're both pretty lightweight. At under 4 ounces, then that's not a bad thing to have in your pack to carry around. You're like, oh, that's a really lightweight t-shirt. But if you've got one that's suitable for hiking, not a cotton shirt, cotton tends to be heavy anyway, why not choose the lighter of the 2, and that is this one. Another advantage is that this one dries very quickly, so I like that. The difference between those 2 shirts, it's one weighs half of what the other one does. So if you're keeping track, if I take the lighter knife and the lighter shirt, I've taken 4 ounces out of my pack. That's a quarter pound. And that brings us to tip number 4, which is specifically to evaluate your clothing. It's very easy to bring extra clothing items, either clothing items that you don't really need or clothing items that don't serve a dual purpose. And because a lot of clothing is heavy, it tends to increase the weight in your pack pretty quickly. You may want to make certain decisions about what to bring on your hike to wear that are not, quote, ultralight. And I do that because I believe that safety is important, and safety is more important than weight. And for me, the idea of getting wet and getting hypothermia because I don't have dry clothes to change into is a risk that I don't want to take. I run into a lot of rain on the trail, and so I'm not going to go there. I carry sleep clothes that can also double as a warm change of clothes. So I have some wool leggings from Ibex. I have a long sleeve wool shirt, and I sleep in those, but at the same time, I know that if I get soaking wet on a hike and I have a chance to get out and to put on something dry, because those are wool, they're going to keep me warm even if they do get wet again. So for me, that is a safety issue, and I'm willing to carry the extra weight. But because I'm doing these other things, I have the room in my pack to carry that extra weight without being at a 20 or 25 pound base weight. So as you're making clothing decisions, think about those safety concerns, but then also think about, are these extra pieces that I really don't need to carry? And here's a great example. A lot of people will end up carrying a windbreaker. So maybe they have a puffy and a fleece and a windbreaker and guess what? A rain jacket. If you've got a good rain jacket, you do not need a windbreaker because that rain jacket is going to block the wind. And if you get it big enough, you can put it on over your puffy and you can layer up. So if you've got a good base layer, which might be a tank top or a t-shirt, and then a mid layer, which could be a wool shirt, even a sun shirt if you're hiking someplace like the PCT that's got a lot of sun, you can put a puffy on over that, or a fleece. You can take both if you want. I carry both, but you don't have to have both because the layers will keep you warm, and then you can top that with your rain jacket as not only an impervious layer to keep you dry, but also to keep the wind out. And because it is somewhat impervious, whether it's DWR or fully waterproof, then that's going to also contain the heat that you're putting out from your body. There's lots of ways to stay warm without taking a whole bunch of clothing. Now you may want shorts and you may want pants. That's your choice. Some people wear the pants that have the zippers to take the legs off. Those tend to be a little bit heavier than just say maybe a lightweight pair of hiking pants and a lightweight pair of running shorts. Now, if you want to take underwear, that's completely up to you. Depending on what you wear when you're hiking, you might decide, I don't really need that. Go commando, I don't care. Just be judicious about the clothing that's in your pack. And I think if you lay everything out and you say, okay, what am I really thinking about taking and what do I not need? Then you can pull out a couple of items and probably save a pound right off the bat. All right, we are up to tip number 5. It is ditch the stuff sacks. This little guy looks light, feels light. It's 13 grams. 13 grams is just about half an ounce. And I see people with these on the trail and I'm thinking, put a rubber band around your pot. Save 13 grams for something else. So if you bought a lot of backpacking gear, you know that like everything comes with a stuff sack. I have a stuff sack for my rain jacket, a stuff sack for tent stakes, a stuff sack that came with a down skirt that I bought, stuff sack that I bought because I thought I needed stuff sacks, a stuff sack for a pillow. Now, some of these I've kept because I store items in them, although if they're down, I might not want to have them compressed anyway. So if you start getting rid of these things, you're going to save a lot of weight in your pack. Now, let me tell you what I've done. This is a nice sturdy little sack for tent stakes, and I carried this for a long time. I could fit my footprint in here with stakes too, so it was pretty practical. But I discovered that I had a different stuff sack. It's not right here, but it is light. This is like a cell nylon, super lightweight. And if I wrap my tent stakes in my footprint and stick it in that, then I'm saving actually about half an ounce on that as well. Now, I do use some stuff sacks. Like I said, I use one for my tent stakes. I have a Dyneema sack for my quilt that keeps it dry. I actually bought a set of 3 of these from Mountain Laurel Designs, actually when I was hiking on the AT because I wanted something lighter than the compression sack that I was using for my quilt. I don't even keep my quilt in the bag unless I'm in rainy weather, because if you know how to pack your pack properly, you don't need a pack that's got all kinds of pockets and things like that. And some packs even have removable things, and you might find that, okay, I can take the brain off the pack, or maybe I can lose a shoulder strap pocket because I don't really need it. You pack your backpack appropriately and you know where everything is in the pack, then you can get away with a lighter backpack, although that costs money, so we'll talk about that later. But it also means that you don't have to have as many stuff sacks. So the way I pack my pack, my quilt goes in the bottom because that's a nice soft layer. I use a heavier mid layer in the pack. It is usually my clothing and then my tent, and because I like to have easy access to my food, I put it on the top. Even though that's not the officially best way to do it, it's better to have the heavier weight around your midsection just for comfort, but it works for me. So I know exactly where everything is in my pack. I've got the dry sack for my quilt when I need it. I have a bag that I keep my clothes in, which actually does double duty because it's a backpack. And then I've got my food bag. And other than that, the tent bag that my tent goes into, that's all the stuff sacks I have. I do carry this little Eagle Creek pouch that has all of I call it my tent bag because it's got things like my electronics, my chargers, my wallet, my comb, just because I like to keep all those things together, and I enjoy the convenience of being able to just take this out of my pack and chuck it in the tent and I know where everything is. That weighs less than an ounce. If you go through your pack and say, okay, what do I have in a stuff sack? Is my rain jacket in a stuff sack? Is my puffy in a stuff sack? Is my pillow in a stuff sack? You don't need all those, and you can take out probably half a pound from your pack maybe just by weighing those sacks and determining which ones you need to keep. And then if you want to use a stuff sack for something, look at all the stuff sacks that you've accumulated from the gear that you bought and pick the ones that are lighter that will hold that item for you. All right, so those are my major tips for taking weight out of your backpack without spending any money at all. If you're a little uncomfortable with some of these choices, then go ahead and head out on a trip, figure out what you use and what you don't, and then when you come home, lay it all out and decide what are you going to leave out of your pack for the next trip, and see if you can shave off half a pound or a pound. I did this process when I was hiking the Appalachian Trail. When I stopped in a hotel room every few weeks, I would lay everything out on the bed and be like, okay, I'm going to take 1 pound out of my pack. I'm going to figure out how to do it. Sometimes I sent things home and I thought, well, I might be asking for that back in a couple of weeks. I never did. There was not a single thing. My cup, it was hard to part with my cup because I was like, I don't know if I can drink coffee out of my pot. I could, it's fine. So, you know, some of those things you feel a little uncomfortable with, but then you learn as you get out there on the trail that you don't need them at all. So I would challenge you to try to adopt some of these tips. And then if you can, drop me a note down in the comments and let me know how much weight you shaved off your pack. If you like this video, then go ahead and subscribe, because that's a great way to not only find out when I put out new videos, but it also lets YouTube know that my videos are well received and helps to get them in front of other people like you who would like to hear what I have to share. So that's it for now. Like I said, I'll be back at you soon with some other ideas for lightening your pack that do cost money, but for now, take these free tips, see what you can do with them, and I will see you soon.